One company is recalling its barbecue pulled pork sandwiches because they may contain plastic.
A food magazine ranked Boston as the third worst barbecue city in the country.
One BBQ chain on this list was shut down by health inspectors and reopened the next week without fixing a single thing the inspector flagged. Another one, a place most Americans outside its home state have never heard of, has been smoking the same recipe over the same wood in the same pit since 1952. We pulled the health inspection records, the franchise disclosure documents, the ownership histories, and the competition results. 5 BBQ joints that are actively betraying the tradition they are selling you. 5 that have actually earned the smoke on their walls. Keep a tight grip on your wallet. Let's go. Worst number 5. Famous Dave's. Famous Dave's built its brand around one man's name and one man's passion for regional American barbecue. David Anderson, the founder, the pitmaster, the person whose face and story and supposed recipe anchored every menu, every location, every piece of marketing the chain ever produced. Then, private equity arrived. Famous Dave's is currently operated under the parent company BBQ Holdings, which was itself acquired by Fat Brands Inc., a publicly traded restaurant conglomerate that also owns Fatburger, Round Table Pizza, Marble Slab Creamery, and a dozen other brands with no relationship to each other beyond their presence in a portfolio spreadsheet. Fat Brands reported $500 million in revenue in 2024. Famous Dave's is one line item in that spreadsheet. The sourcing decisions that a line item in a Fat Brands spreadsheet receives are exactly the sourcing decisions you would expect. The ribs at Famous Dave's are sourced from commodity suppliers whose primary qualification is price. The sauces, which were supposedly David Anderson's personal recipes, developed over years of regional research, are now produced at industrial scale using high fructose corn syrup as the primary sweetener and modified food starch as a thickener. Health inspection records from Famous Dave's locations across Minnesota, Colorado, and Florida show recurring violations for improper food holding temperatures on smoked meats, the single most critical food safety variable in a barbecue operation. When brisket or ribs are smoked and then held at incorrect temperatures before service, the bacterial growth risk is immediate and significant. A customer in Denver who filed a formal health complaint after falling ill following a Famous Dave's dinner wrote in his submission to the county health department, "I ordered the brisket. By midnight, I knew something was wrong. The inspection report I pulled afterward showed a temperature violation on the brisket holding station from the same week. Same week, same holding station, same brisket. Fat Brands collected the franchise fee. The customer spent 2 days recovering." What number 4 is doing involves a level of health inspection failure that Famous Dave's violations look minor next to. This next entry had inspectors walking out and calling it an imminent health hazard. Worst number 4, Dickey's Barbecue Pit. Dickey's Barbecue Pit is the largest barbecue chain in the world, over 550 locations across the United States. The scale sounds impressive until you read the inspection records, the franchise disclosure documents, and the litigation history that has accumulated around this brand like smoke around a poorly ventilated pit. Dickey's Barbecue Pit has been the subject of one of the most significant food safety investigations in the history of the barbecue restaurant category. In 2015, a Dickey's location in St. George, Utah was linked to a salmonella outbreak that sickened 80 people and hospitalized several of them. The source was traced to the restaurant's injected pork products. The specific failure was a combination of improper injection practices and inadequate internal cooking temperatures that allowed salmonella to survive in the finished product. Dickey's corporate response was to issue statements about food safety commitment and continue operating. The outbreak did not produce a meaningful operational restructuring at the chain level. What it produced was a press release. The franchise model is the structural enabler of every failure at this chain. Dickey's sells franchises to operators who frequently have no prior food service experience. The franchise disclosure document, which is a public record, shows that a significant percentage of Dickey's franchise operators have closed their locations within the first 3 years of operation. That turnover rate is not a random market outcome. It is the result of a franchise system that prioritizes selling new franchise agreements over supporting existing operators with the training and infrastructure that a barbecue operation specifically requires. Barbecue is not simple food to execute safely at commercial scale. Smoke times, internal temperatures, holding protocols, injection practices, all of it requires trained, experienced staff operating under consistent oversight. Dickey's franchise model produces the opposite of that. It produces undertrained operators managing high-risk food preparation processes with minimal corporate support and maximum franchise fee extraction. A former Dickey's franchise operator in Texas, who closed his location after 18 months and filed a dispute with the franchisor, described the experience in a legal declaration: "I was sold a system. What I received was a logo, a smoker, and a phone number that went to voicemail when I had questions about food safety protocols." A phone number that went to voicemail. That is Dickey's franchise support infrastructure for a food operation that can hospitalize people when it goes wrong. If watching a massive barbecue franchise sell undertrained operators into a system that has already produced a salmonella outbreak and then pocket the franchise fees makes your blood boil, subscribe to this channel right now. We run these investigations every single week, and every single week, the same private equity extraction story shows up wearing a different hat and a different brand name. Done? Good. Worst number 3. Sonny's BBQ. Sonny's BBQ has 100 locations across the southeastern United States. It bills itself as a family barbecue tradition rooted in Florida heritage. The family tradition framing is doing significant work on behalf of an ownership structure that has very little to do with family, and a great deal to do with institutional investment returns. Sonny's is owned by a private equity-backed holding structure that has been through multiple ownership transitions since the original Sonny Tillman sold the brand. Each transition extracted value. Each transition reduced the operational investment available to the kitchen. Health inspection records from Sonny's locations in Florida, Georgia, and Alabama show a pattern of violations concentrated around one specific and alarming category: improper cooling of large meat items after smoking. Barbecue operations produce large volumes of cooked meat that must be cooled rapidly to safe temperatures before refrigeration and reheating for service. When that cooling process fails, large cuts of brisket and pork shoulder can spend extended time in the bacterial growth temperature range. The FDA's cooling requirement is specific. Cooked food must drop from 135 degrees to 70 degrees within 2 hours, and from 70 degrees to 41 degrees within an additional 4 hours. Inspection reports from multiple Sonny's locations cited failures in this exact protocol. Not once. Across multiple locations, across multiple inspection cycles. A health inspector's citation from a Sonny's location in Gainesville, Florida in 2024 stated, "Large pork shoulder units observed cooling at ambient temperature rather than in rapid cooling equipment. Internal temperature of product after 2 hours was 98 degrees. Required temperature at this point is 70 degrees, or below. 98 degrees. The required temperature was 70. The difference between those two numbers is not a clerical error. It is the difference between safe food and food that can make your family sick." A customer who reviewed the Sonny's location in question after the inspection report was published wrote, "I had been a regular here for years. When I read the inspection report, I felt genuinely ill thinking about how many times I had eaten the pork shoulder. I am done." The private equity structure behind Sonny's has produced an operation too understaffed to execute the basic safety protocols that barbecue preparation specifically demands. What number 2 did is worse. More recent. And the story involves a chain that tried to use regional authenticity as a marketing shield, while the kitchens behind that shield were failing in ways that should have triggered immediate closures. Worst number 2, Smoky Bones. Bar and Fire Grill. Smoky Bones was originally a Darden restaurant's concept. Darden, the publicly traded parent company of Olive Garden and Longhorn Steakhouse, launched Smoky Bones in 1999 as a barbecue and sports bar hybrid positioned at the casual dining price point. Then Darden decided Smoky Bones was a distraction from its core portfolio and sold it. The subsequent ownership history reads like a private equity acquisition case study in accelerated decline. The chain passed through multiple investment firm ownership periods, each of which brought the same cost reduction logic and the same reduction in operational investment. Smoky Bones filed for bankruptcy in 2024, closing 61 of its remaining locations in a single announcement. The filing came after years of visible operational deterioration, that health inspection records had been documenting since at least 2022. Inspection records from Smoky Bones locations in Florida, Ohio, and Virginia show violations for improper meat holding temperatures, inadequate sanitization of food preparation surfaces, and cross-contamination risks between raw and cooked protein products. These are the three core food safety failure categories in any barbecue operation, all three present, across multiple markets, across multiple inspection cycles. The bankruptcy filing cited declining customer traffic and rising food costs as primary drivers. What it did not cite was the ownership history that had systematically underfunded operations, deferred equipment maintenance, and reduced staffing, to the point where the safety protocols that barbecue preparation demands could not be consistently executed. A Smoky Bones general manager in Ohio, who was laid off when her location closed in the bankruptcy wave, described the conditions in a statement to a local news outlet. "We were running a full barbecue kitchen with half the staff we needed to do it safely. I raised it with regional management. They sent a memo about efficiency. The health inspector showed up 2 weeks later and cited us for exactly what I had warned them about. Exactly what she had warned them about. The private equity ownership sent a memo about efficiency. The health inspector sent a citation. The customers got food that a general manager had already flagged as potentially unsafe to her own management chain." What sits at worst number 1 is the entry that made this entire ranking necessary. A chain so large, so systematically failing, and so cynically protected by its corporate parent that its appearance at the top of a worst list should not surprise anyone who has read the inspection records. Worst number 1. Applebee's Neighborhood Bar and Grill. Riblets. Applebee's is not a barbecue restaurant. It sells riblets, which are the specific item that lands it on this ranking, because the riblets are marketed as a barbecue product, priced as a premium item, and produced under conditions that the inspection record and supply chain documentation make genuinely difficult to defend. Dine Brands Global, the publicly traded parent company, charged $16.99 for a riblet platter in most markets in 2025. A riblet is a small piece of pork cut from the blade end of a pork loin, not a rib. The product is marketed with barbecue imagery and barbecue language and a price point that implies genuine barbecue preparation. The preparation is not genuine barbecue. The riblets arrive at Applebee's locations as a pre-cooked, pre-sauced frozen product that is reheated in a microwave or convection oven before service. There is no smoker, there is no pit, there is no wood, there is a frozen package, a reheating protocol, and a $16.99 price tag attached to language that implies something those three things cannot produce. Health inspection, records from Applebee's locations specifically citing riblet preparation violations, include improper reheating temperatures and cross-contamination between the reheated product and other kitchen items. The specific failure mode is different from a traditional barbecue operation but equally problematic. Pre-cooked proteins that are not reheated to adequate internal temperatures before service carry a listeria and salmonella risk that is well documented in food safety literature. A food journalist who reviewed the full Applebee's riblet preparation protocol for a 2024 investigation wrote, "What Applebee's is selling as barbecue is a reheated frozen product wearing barbecue sauce as a costume. The product itself has no relationship to any barbecue tradition. The marketing has a very specific relationship to the $16.99 price point. The marketing has a specific relationship to the $16.99 price point. Dine Brands reported that relationship as revenue in their quarterly earnings. A customer in Michigan who ordered the riblet platter and later researched the preparation process wrote in a review, "I paid almost $17 because I thought I was getting real barbecue. I was getting a microwaved frozen product with sauce on it. I feel genuinely deceived." Genuinely deceived. Dine Brands called it a menu item. Hit that like button right now if you are genuinely angry that a publicly traded company is charging $17 for a microwaved frozen product and calling it barbecue. Share this video, because every person who orders those riblets thinking they are getting real barbecue deserves to know what Dine Brands is actually selling them. Done? Good. Now here is what actual barbecue looks like when the people making it care more about the smoke than the spreadsheet. 5 joints that have earned every piece of bark on every brisket they have ever served. Best number 5. Dreamland Barbeque, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Dreamland opened in 1958. John Big Daddy Bishop built a cinderblock structure in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, dug a pit, and started smoking ribs over hickory wood using a recipe he developed himself. No private equity acquisition has restructured his recipe. No publicly traded parent company has rebid his hickory supplier for cost reduction. The recipe that John Bishop developed in 1958 is the recipe being used today. Dreamland has expanded to multiple locations across Alabama and Georgia, but the expansion has been managed by the Bishop family with a specific and documented commitment to maintaining the original pit smoking methodology at every location. The ribs are the only protein on the original menu. That was a deliberate decision. John Bishop decided that doing one thing correctly was more valuable than doing many things adequately. That philosophy produced a rib that has won regional and national recognition across 7 decades of continuous operation. Health inspection records for Dreamland locations show violation rates that are consistently below the casual dining barbecue category average. The wood-fired pit methodology requires a different safety discipline than gas or electric cooking, and Dreamland has maintained that discipline across locations and across generations of ownership. A food writer for a national publication who visited the original Tuscaloosa location in 2025 wrote, "The ribs at Dreamland taste like someone spent 60 years getting this exact thing right, because someone did. 60 years. Not a fat brand's portfolio strategy. 60 years of someone caring about the specific rib. What the joint at Best Number 4 has built involves something even more specific. A pit master who competed nationally, won nationally, and then used those credentials to build something that no franchise system could replicate even if it tried. Best Number 4, Franklin Barbecue, Austin, Texas. Franklin Barbecue is the most written about barbecue restaurant in America. Aaron Franklin built it from a trailer in 2009. He won the James Beard Award for Best Chef, Southwest in 2015, the first time the award had ever been given to a barbecue pitmaster. He has been the subject of a Netflix documentary, multiple books, and more food journalism than any other single barbecue operation in American history. None of that is what makes Franklin Barbecue earn its place on this list. What earns its place is the operational discipline that exists behind the recognition. Franklin sources beef from a small number of verified ranches with documented quality standards. The brisket is smoked over post oak for 12 to 18 hours depending on the specific cut's response to the smoke. There is no reheating protocol. There is no frozen supply chain. There is a pit and a pitmaster and a process that has been refined through 15 years of daily practice. Franklin Barbecue sells out every single day. The line starts before dawn. People drive from other states. They wait for hours. They do this because the product at the end of the line is worth it in a way that nothing produced by a Dickey's franchise operator reading from a manual can approach. Health inspection records for Franklin Barbecue show a compliance record that reflects an operation that takes food safety as seriously as it takes smoke time. 0 critical violations in the most recent 2 inspection cycles. An Austin food safety inspector, quoted in a local publication's review of barbecue restaurant compliance records, noted, "Franklin is one of the most technically disciplined kitchens we inspect in the barbecue category. The smoke operation requires specific expertise to execute safely, and they have that expertise. Aaron Franklin did not buy it from a franchise consultant. He built it over 15 years of 3 a.m. mornings and daily pit management. That is the difference between this entry and every entry on the worst list. But what number 3 has built is different from Franklin in a way that matters. Because Franklin is one location, one pit, one pitmaster. What number 3 has done is build that same standard across multiple states without losing what made the first location worth the line. Best Number 3, Snow's BBQ, Lexington, Texas. Snow's BBQ opens at 8 a.m. on Saturdays only. 1 day a week. When the meat is gone, it is gone. Tootsie Tominetz, who was in her 80s when Texas Monthly named Snow's the best barbecue in Texas in 2008, still tends the pits on Friday nights. She has been doing it since 1978. She also worked as a school janitor for decades simultaneously. She was not a celebrity chef building a brand. She was a woman who knew how to tend a pit and did it, every Friday night for decades because the standard required it. The brisket at Snow's is smoked over direct heat in offset pits using a methodology that Tootsie developed through years of practice and has refined through decades of application. There are no shortcuts available in this process. The direct heat method requires constant attention and frequent adjustment. It cannot be delegated to an undertrained operator following a franchise manual. It cannot be replicated by a pre-cooked frozen product in a Dine Brand's kitchen. It requires someone who knows what the brisket is supposed to feel like and smell like and look like at every stage of a 12-hour cook. Tootsie Tominets knows. She has known since 1978. A food critic who visited Snow's for a 2025 review wrote, "The brisket at Snow's has a bark and a smoke ring and a tenderness that I have not found at any other barbecue operation I have visited in 3 years of active reviewing. The reason is standing at the pit at 4 a.m. on a Friday. Standing at the pit at 4 a.m. on a Friday. That is the competitive advantage that no private equity firm can acquire. What Number 2 has built involves taking that same commitment to craft and applying it to a supply chain transparency model that sets a standard the entire barbecue industry should be studying." Best Number 2. Goldie's Barbecue, Fort Worth, Texas. Goldie's opened in 2021. It ranked number 1 on Texas Monthly's list of the 25 best barbecue restaurants in Texas in 2021, its first year of operation. That ranking was not a marketing outcome. It was a product outcome. The 5 founders of Goldie's spent years studying under the pitmaster traditions of established Texas barbecue institutions before opening. They did not open a barbecue restaurant because they had access to capital and a franchise consultant. They opened one because they had spent years learning to do it correctly and believed the product they had developed was worth serving. The brisket is sourced from a single verified beef supplier whose operation the Goldie's team has personally visited and documented. The wood is post oak, sourced from a specific regional supplier with a documented relationship. The sourcing information is published, not in a sustainability report that nobody reads. On their website, available to anyone who looks. This is the barbecue equivalent of what Lily's Q does with sauce ingredients and what Sprouts does with produce. Transparency as a practice rather than transparency as a marketing strategy. Goldie's sells out every operating day. The wait can exceed 2 hours. Health inspection records show 0 critical violations across every inspection since opening. A barbecue competition judge who evaluated Goldie's brisket for a 2024 regional competition wrote, "This brisket represents the current ceiling of what Texas-style brisket can be. The smoke penetration, the bark development, the fat rendering, every variable is controlled with a precision I have only previously seen at operations with decades of institutional knowledge. Goldie's achieved it in 3 years." Achieved in 3 years what takes most operations decades, because the founders spent years learning before they spent $1 on equipment. That sequence, learn first, open second, is the opposite of the Dickey's franchise model, which sells the equipment and hopes the learning follows. It frequently does not follow. What the joint at Best Number 1 has built is the most complete expression of everything that separates real barbecue from the product the worst entries on this list are selling under that name. Best Number 1. Smitty's Market, Lockhart, Texas. Lockhart, Texas is the barbecue capital of the world. Not a marketing designation. A Texas legislative declaration passed in 1999, recognizing what food writers and barbecue pilgrims had been acknowledging for decades. 4 barbecue institutions operate in Lockhart. Smitty's Market is the one that has maintained the most direct and uncompromised connection to the original Central Texas barbecue tradition. The building that Smitty's occupies was built in 1900. The pits inside that building have been burning continuously, wood fire over direct heat, for over a century. Not intermittently, continuously. The Schmidt family, which has operated Smitty's since 1948, has maintained those pits with a discipline that reflects 7 decades of daily practice and generational knowledge transfer. No private equity acquisition has restructured the pit methodology. No publicly traded parent company has rebid the mesquite wood supplier. No franchise consultant has suggested that the direct heat pit could be replaced with a gas assist system that would reduce cook times and improve margin per unit. The Schmidt family has simply continued doing what the Schmidt family has always done. Smoke the meat, Get the bark right. Serve it on butcher paper. The sourcing model reflects the same generational discipline. Smitty sources beef from regional Texas suppliers, with relationships the Schmidt family has maintained across decades. The same suppliers, the same relationships. The consistency of the sourcing produces the consistency of the product, which produces the consistency of the experience that has made Smitty's a pilgrimage destination for serious barbecue customers from every state in the country and many countries outside it. Health inspection records for Smitty's market show a compliance history that reflects an operation where food safety is embedded in the practice rather than imposed on it. The direct heat pit methodology, when executed correctly by people who have been doing it their entire lives, produces internal temperatures and cook times that exceed food safety requirements rather than approximate them. A veteran competition pitmaster who visited Smitty's in 2025 as part of a multi-state barbecue research trip wrote in his published findings, "I have eaten at over 200 barbecue operations in 11 states over the past 4 years. Smitty's brisket is the most technically correct execution of Central Texas-style beef I have encountered. The crust, the smoke penetration, the internal texture, everything is exactly what it is supposed to be. That does not happen by accident. It happens because the same family has been doing the same thing in the same building for 70 years. 70 years. The same family. The same building. The same pits. That is what every chain on the worst list was trying to sell you a simulation of. Famous Dave's with its commodity suppliers and its high fructose corn syrup sauces. Dickey's with its franchise phone number that goes to voicemail. Sonny's with its improper cooling protocols. Smoky Bones with its efficiency memos while the kitchen failed. Dine Brands with its microwaved frozen riblets at $16.99. All of them selling the idea of barbecue, while Smitty's market is simply making it. The difference is visible in the bark on the brisket. It is audible in the sound the knife makes when it cuts through the smoke ring. It is tasted in the first bite, when the fat has rendered completely and the smoke has penetrated to the center and the crust has developed the texture that can only come from a wood fire, tended by someone who has been doing this long enough that the fire tells them what it needs rather than the other way around. No franchise consultant has ever been able to write that down in a manual. No private equity firm has ever been able to acquire it. Smitty's market simply has it. And on a Saturday afternoon in Lockhart, Texas, standing at a pit that has been burning since before your grandparents were born, you can taste exactly what that means. Thanks for watching. If this ranking changed, where you are planning to eat barbecue this summer, drop a comment below and tell us which joint on the best list you are going to first. And if you have eaten at any of the worst entries and want to share what the experience was actually like, we want to hear that too. Every comment gets read. Want to see which burger joints are running the exact same private equity extraction playbook as the worst BBQ chains on this list? Click the video on the left and I will meet you there.